speaker is a consulting economist based in Wellington, the founder and managing director of Copelands and Co. He has undertaken a wide range of studies for public and private sector clients in New Zealand and overseas. He's worked and travelled extensively in Australia, the South Pacific, and Asia, and it is my pleasure to welcome to the microphone Mike Copeland.
Well, thank you very much, Terry, and well done, Rotorua, in scoring this conference. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very impressed with your racing theme today, but I have to apologise for being a racing novice. I once attended an auction when one of the items being auctioned was a horseshoe as worn by a Kiwi when he won the Melbourne Cup. And the auctioneer proclaimed it was a limited edition, only 12 ever made. Ladies and gentlemen, a few weeks ago, or a few months ago in fact, Larry Graham rang me, your CEO, and said to me, Copey, do you believe in free speech? And I said, I do. He said, well good, because you're given one at Rotorua Vegas on the 21st of March. The topic I was given, bureaucracy plus profits, year right, was also given to me by Larry Graham. So you can blame him not only for asking me to speak, but also for what I've got to say. I spoke at a Clubs New Zealand conference in Blenheim about 5 years ago, and it's something of a novel experience for me to be asked back, let alone to be asked back to speak. But we've got Mary Pickett to come along after me to tidy up, so I'm told. With respect to my topic, let me start at the end. Year right. During the day, normally I'm a consulting economist, as Terry has told you, and one of my jobs up here in the Bay of Plenty is in association with the RENA, the boat, the RENA, which is stuck out there on Esplanade Reef. I understand one of the billboards going around by Tui at the time was, I know a shortcut to the port. Year right. Well, on the subject of Tui beer promotions, and I've got nothing against other beers being promoted here today, such as Wild Buck and Carlsberg. I'm sure some of you serve and drink those other drinks. But besides the New Zealand cricket team's fantastic performance this summer, what a fantastic promotion the Tui orange shirts and the one-armed catch competition was this year. Quite outstanding. And what an innings from McCullum down in Wellington, taking the second test against the Indians into a 5-day draw. In Wellington it wasn't possible to get local bread or a pint of milk from any of the dairies, because all the Indians were at the cricket, but it was still well worth it. With respect to the rest of my topic, I'm not sure who said it, but I understand the three most misleading statements in the world are: the check's in the mail, 3 cheers for the referee, and I'm from the government, I'm here to help. I think the last one was Ronald Reagan, and his more famous quote, in my opinion, was the time he was asked to buck Palace, and the Queen worked out that Ronald Reagan, being a former movie star in B-grade Western movies, took him round the stables. And as they went past one horse that let out this almighty fart, and the Queen turned to Ronald Reagan and said, Mr. President, I do apologise. And he said, Ma'am, if you hadn't said anything, I would have sworn it was a horse. So I think I've got a little bit of racism, and any toilet people will go down well. Good. Shortly after Larry asked me to speak, and this is a true story, ladies and gentlemen, I received the following email. This is people in government. I think this says it all. In clubs on the left are the people, working your guts out, and there's the government. It's not fishing in a river, it's going over your back and helping itself to what you've caught. And that's the best explanation I've seen about bureaucracy and profits. However, I have a bit of a confession to make. As a consulting economist, I make a lot of money out of bureaucracy. Our economic consulting firm's been going for quite a while. In fact, one of our founding partners was a guy called Elijah. And he went up a hill one day and God spoke to him through this burning bush and said, Elijah, I've got good news and bad news. And Elijah's a bit of an optimist. He said, well, give me the good news first, God. And God said, well, he said, on day 1 next week, he said, I'm going to send a plague of locusts, day 2 a flood, day 3 a fire, day 4 an earthquake, and so on. And on day 7, that young fellow Moses is going to lead the Jews through the Red Sea. The sea's going to part. And when the Egyptians come charging after with their army on their chariots, the sea's going to close and drown them, and you're off to the promised land forever and ever. And Elijah says, well, I've been hanging around for a while. God, he said, that's fantastic news. There can be no bad news. What is the bad news? And God said, well, I want you to write the environmental impact report. So since that date, ladies and gentlemen, our firm's been writing environmental impact reports, or at least certain sections of them, to do with economics. And there is no doubt that's bureaucracy, a whole industry built up around it, and I'm only getting a fraction of what the lawyers are getting, unfortunately, but however, it's still better than nothing. At the moment, I'm working in Wellington on the Basin Reserve Bridge project, which was meant to take 4 weeks. It looks like it's going to take 3 months just of hearings. It is just incredible the amount of time these things take and the cost. Alongside that is the War Memorial Park project, which is a tunnel going underneath an area which is in front of the War Memorial. And fortunately, they decided it was quite important to have that project finished in time for Anzac Day next year, i.e. 2015, because that's 100 years since delivery. So the powers that be passed a special act, got it through, and without a whimper, hardly anything in the papers, it's through, and the hole's 3/4 dug. And I think sometimes it shows you, sometimes in life, you do need a benevolent dictator. Now, I have a friend who's developed 2 very successful private businesses, and his philosophy as the chairman on his board says, all those of you who agree with me say aye, and all those of you who don't resign. The same guy actually got himself elected to the Wellington Hospital board, and it turned out, Mary Peg's going to love me for this, there was one other guy, a left-wing activist called Don Borry, and 8 other people who were all women. And my friend said to them, well, Borry, you're a communist, so you can't be the chairman, and you women belong on the ironing board, not the hospital board, I have to be the chairman. Somehow or other, they didn't vote for him. Internationally, of course, bureaucracies are perhaps worse. Offshore, my business partner and I did quite a bit of work for a crowd called the Asian Development Bank. It's like a regional world bank. We just got to know the jargon, really. New Zealand's an agricultural country, so we called ourselves offshore agricultural economists. And we usually end up in countries such as Pakistan, Uzbekistan and so forth, telling people how to grow rice and cotton, none of which you'll find on the Canterbury Plains or in the Hawke's Bay or anywhere. But however, we were the experts. We sort of went to those sort of countries that no one else really wanted to go to. Pakistan's one of those countries where you never really own your food, you only rent it. And on one occasion, I could see, I was there for 2 months, and I worked out I was getting home early, and like a week early, so in those days it was faxes, we didn't have texting or email and so forth, and I faxed my wife and said, getting home early, week early, April the 24th, 10 a.m, flight 406 from Auckland, because up in Pakistan, if you steal, they cut your hand off. So I've never really thought too much about adultery in that part of the world. And I've been listening to wife, you know, as you do, so I said, so meet me at the airport naked with a mattress strapped to your back. And she faxed back and said, well, that's fine by me, but just make sure you're the first guy off the plane. Of you people to laugh there because I got asked once to do a speech for the Wellington Central Rotary Club, and I won't be asked again. But that was, apparently they had put an apology the following week because first of all I told them I was racist, and I checked the thing, well the Pakistan joke about the food was the only one I just, you know, I tell that for Pakistani. And well, what he had strapped around I suppose. Yeah, I won't go there. They do have great birthday parties, so they're not put on musical chairs to bloody well pass the parcel. But anyhow, apparently that was a secret joke, and the thing that gets me, and Mary Packer can she can sort this out later, the point of that joke is, a woman get money too. The joke's against me, and I thought, yeah. Then moving on, the bureaucracy of Asian Development Bank, we got better rates from Asian Development Bank if we were a company rather than working as an individual. But being Asian and being bureaucratic, they have a very clear definition of what is a company. Must have a minimum of 7 people. So we register as a company, we only had 2 employees, but we got 7 people, of course we had. And we're up there doing a negotiation once, and this guy said, who are the other five guys besides Brown and Copeland? Oh, you wouldn't know, they don't oversee work. No, yeah, come on, who are the other 5? Who are the 5? Fortunately for us, this guy's are Filipinos. Filipino guys know nothing, full stop, we've all run the country. But secondly, Filipinos know very little about New Zealand as they've been here. So we needed 5 names, so my business partner just started reading out the All Blacks from fullback. Those days with John Gallagher, we got the second 5, I couldn't quite remember John Schuster, but I had visions later on of these guys coming to auditors. I had to employ these 5 All Blacks to walk up and down the corridor according to serve with a briefcase. So far, so good. In terms of clubs, bureaucracies and profits, I've not been involved in running a charter club, but I have helped out over a number of years running my favourite club, Old Boys University Rugby Club in Wellington. I was involved in that club when it was back in the university days only, of moving out of the pub rooms to a pub, and the move has been perfect. Let the pub handle the police, the city council, the health department and so forth, and just as importantly, the economics, or the profits, or the lack of profits if you like, of a club being required for 1 day a week, so many hours a day, for less than 6 months a year, is just nonsense. And out there, in my opinion, there's an avalanche of deferred maintenance which is going to come tumbling down on sports clubs, and no amount of pub charity is going to go to prop them up when they have to replace roofs and walls and all the rest of it. So certainly in our club it was hopeless because we, the university club, we couldn't even run raffles, let alone have working bees and things like that. So I think new clubs could maybe have win-win situations with sports clubs in your area, and I understand to some extent that's already happened. However, if like in our case, we're currently at the Cambridge Hotel, and he pops us not here now, but there's a guy called Dan Keith who was mine host there, and he's now working as a TAB development manager or something or other. But he could tell you the do's and don'ts and what clubs to have in and what clubs not to have in. But it's worked perfectly for our club. Great fun. But there are clubs and clubs, and for example, a month ago, my wife, who's a member of the Rotorua Floral Art Club, she went out drinking on a Friday night, came home at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, called me suspicious, but I said, where have you been? She said, I've been out with the Floral Art Club friends, didn't want to drink and drive, they told me about that, and I stayed over at one of their places. Well, I called 10 of her closest Floral Art Club friends, not one of them knew anything about it. The following week, it was my turn to go out. I went out with my Old Boys University rugby mates, same thing, 10 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning, where have you been? Didn't want to drink and drive, here, same as you. She rang 10 of my closest Old Boys University rugby mates. 6 of them said I'd stay with them. And 4 of them reckon I was still there. So some clubs have got integrity, comradeship, stick-togetherness. And I'm not knocking the Rotorua Floral Art Club, not the whole club. But sometimes you don't get that out of a Floral Art Club, so be choosy. But don't you too worry about cultural match. Our club, Old Boys University, have had for years and years, probably one of the most successful promotions we have. Steal it if you want, you don't have any IP. It's called Mr. OBU. And each team has to put up a nominee, and they must wear daywear, nightwear and swimwear. And they must answer questions about what they'd do for world peace if they won this trophy. And it's been extremely successful, and the imagination of a lot of these university students, these are the brains of the country in future years, ladies and gentlemen. And this year, unfortunately I wasn't there, but I heard about this guy. He came up to the MC and he said, look, he said, I've got to be on at 9:05. And the MC said, well, it's a pretty casual sort of thing, the third round night, you can be on a little bit, you'll be first, but it'll be around 9:05. Anyhow, at 9:05, 9:10, this guy gets up and he was completely covered in tinfoil. He got on the stage and the MC said, what are you? He's on a pole. The next thing, bursting through the doors came the stripper he had hired, and she did the pole dance off him. And of course he was worried about getting on with his paying by the minute. She took off the top, I understand, but not the bottom. And the first thing she said, and this is the sign of the times, she said to the MC, as soon as you got on stage, now no photographs. And immediately there was 200 flash around the pub. Now, because you don't take photos on public these days, don't do it when people got cell phones, and everyone has got a cell phone. I wasn't there that night because I was actually down on Stewart Island, and part of the highlight of my trip was actually at Oban. There's a pub there, I don't know if you've been there, but I went into the urinal. You would probably haven't been in the urinal at Stewart Island. But on the walls, a Klondike machine, and they had written up in a felt pen, if machine empty, see barman. And some had written underneath it, if machine full, see barmaid. your change back, someone said, for refunds, stick baby in here. Behind the bar was a billboard which said, the management and staff are sick and tired of getting irate calls from wives. In future, the following charges will apply. He didn't come in this afternoon, $2.50. He's on his way home, $5. He's talking business with a mate, $7.60. Very clever, young man. However, back to bureaucracy, privates and clubs. I don't think I should be asked again there, but I thought I'd prove it this time. I understand your biggest bureaucratic battles at the moment relate to gambling and liquor licensing. With respect to gambling, Larry can explain to you all the court action and associated costs clubs New Zealanders involved in trying to hold business with the Crown to account and the various dealings he's had with the Ministry of Internal Affairs. With respect to licensing laws, there's little doubt just from me reading the papers that the local government and the police are upping the ante, possibly using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, with measures to address problem drinking and alcohol abuse. And to me, they appear to be leading to unnecessary bureaucratic costs and collateral damage to those in society whose consumption of alcohol, in my opinion, has very few antisocial costs. A couple of examples being in the media down in my area is the Paraparaumu RSA. I don't know anyone here from there, but they were trying to do a $10 lunch for pensioners and include a glass of wine in it. They're doing it for years, and they had to go around the hoops of getting a liquor licence. Like the extra costs, uncertainty, the delays, or what they had going, completely disproportionate to my view. The Waikanae Bridge Club, apparently they were having this special licence to serve alcohol at the bridge. The bridge club, too intelligent for me. I went one of their busy ones. They just correctly. I look at the people, and there's no one in the world other people who engage in wanton vandalism and mayhem on the way home from bridge. I don't. Well, I suppose in this day and age, what all the greenies and everyone will have you think is that you get to stay home and play on your computers with yourself. We had the word I was actually, the first time ever in my life, I was going to write a letter to the paper while I was still employed anyway, because I'm always just interested in looking after number one. But when the Indians and the English and the Aussies were going to take their whole game of cricket and just play with themselves, I was actually going to write a letter to the Indian cricket board who might be New Zealand saying, dear sir, well done New Zealand for beating India. If there are any members of the Indian Cricket Board here, can I please tell you we have a word in the English language about playing with yourself. It starts with W and it's not Wally. And in a sort of way, it's a bit like that. People say you just should stay home, you shouldn't travel on roads and rest, and just play with your computers. I heard of a guy recently who got beaten by his computer playing chess. He was very proud to tell me that the computer was completely out of his league when it came to kickboxing. Recently in Wellington, I'm afraid there's been an anti-Wellington Sevens campaign, almost by the media with the help of the police. And I'm not being angry, police. I don't know why it's when we have something good that people have to knock it. Be it the dairy industry, be it All Blacks, whatever. But sure enough, the only media it seems that sells is bad media, at least as far as the front page is concerned. I was on the Wellington Union for a while, and so I had the benefit of seeing what a fantastic tournament the Wellington Sevens was, and what a fantastic party it was, and how little it had to do with rugby. But that didn't matter. From a financial point of view, for the New Zealand Rugby Union, my understanding is it paid for their whole international campaign at the time. It may not now because they've upped the salaries for DJ Forbes and Titch and so forth. But Wellington Rugby Union probably cleared a mill between you. Well, don't tell anyone I told you, but tell anyone you want. Even the Wellington City Council, only the Wellington City Council could walk away as they got profitable, but that's councils for you, apart from council behind us. The broad economic returns for restaurants, hotels, other accommodation providers, taxis, you name it. I actually heard of a guy from Poketika. I come from Graham, I don't know if they're from the West Coast, but he came up and said he had such a great time, he felt a bit guilty about it. So he went to Copelands, that's like our downtown store, Arthur Barnes and Needham, I don't know, Equipments in Rotorua. But he had bought this beautiful dress for his wife, he took it back to Poketika, and next Saturday night when they went out, she put it on, and as women do, she put it this way, that way, and she said, how do I look? He said, same as usual, your ass is still as big as a 4-burner barbecue. They went out that night, they came home, and as usual with a foreplay, they got in the bed, he said, how about some sex? And she said, you think I'm going to light up a 4-burner barbecue for half a sausage? You're mistaken. century Rotary would have been out at the 4 Burn barbecue. At least people hung around for a lot last of it, which is really a joke against me, I think. Yeah. But there was great poor economic returns for dress shops as well as other things. That was the relevance of that joke, or whatever. Those who attended love it, or have loved it, and even Wellingtonians who don't attend have a sense of pride and enjoyment seeing the buzz. You know, I mean, a lot of people sweep and dress up and don't even go to the bloody tournament. They just do the after match and formats and all the rest of it. And it also helps to create an image for Wellington of a destination place with a buzz. It had all those positives. And then the bads come along. The rugby's not good. We know it's not good. I'm not big. DJ, they play their guts out. Such done fantastic well. But we know in this day and age, we don't have Copelands and Longies running around. Any player who's good enough for a Super 15 contract will not be playing. Maybe next year with the Olympic Games and the rest of it, but generally speaking it's the case. But it didn't matter because the stars were the people turning up paying the money. It was brilliant economics. However, alcohol misuse, I'm sure there's some, and who am I to say that there's not too much and all the rest of it, but to me, and this is just my personal opinion, urinating in a side street behind a dumper bin, I don't put the same category as drunken driving, physical assaults or domestic, including domestic assaults. They are serious issues. But what's on the front page of the Dominion Post on the Monday morning after the tournament? A guy having a slash up a street called Woodward Street. Okay, it's off the Lambton Key and so forth, but he was trying his best to keep the street, you know. And it was me. Yeah, he'd be taking a camera, you wouldn't see nothing. Anyhow, moving on. I'll also try and do comparisons with Auckland Mines. They're two completely different products. They're in two different cities. They're two different events. It doesn't have to be them and us. Good luck to the league people in Auckland having the Nines. Good on them. But we don't need to be comparing one with the other. The papers, our paper, our Dominion Post, you know, it takes money out of one pocket to sponsor women in rugby. And yet it's got these reporters who run out and try and rubbish it on the other hand, just because it was successful. I suspect this year, they had a few other things, like Tick fell over a few other things this year. But frankly, you know, I think the Wellington Sevens is seriously under threat. And that was in June in the event calendar of Wellington. And I think the organisers, the Wellington Rugby Union, New Zealand Rugby Union probably has to take some leadership. The Westpac Stadium and the City Council were missing in action when it really counted. So what does that mean for clubs in New Zealand? Possibly not a lot. So it's not a good reason to give Larry a hard time at lunch for asking me to speak. But in my view, for what it's worth, clubs in New Zealand, we, Joe and Josephine public, don't really know who you are. Sometimes it's good to fly beneath the radar, but when the proverbial hits the fan, it's often useful to have a presence in the minds of the public, and desirably a positive presence. Staying mum in the face of immediate barrage may not be an option, as Carissa Simons is going to tell you this afternoon. I've got a mate, I've got a saying coming out with my group. Oh, yeah, sorry, my mistake. You have to sometimes front foot things, and to be able to do that, it seems to me you have to be proactive and identify what are all your good points, and you probably have to do that before the balloon goes up. I've got a mate who's in PR, he's one of the best bullshitters I know. He's also from the West Coast. 2 bottles of Pinot and a kg of white paper. He can get any photograph he wants on page 1 or page 2 or page 3 of the Dominion Post, because he just knows stuff like it, you know. That's how, that's the West Coast white gold is white bait. Up here in Rotorua, I don't know what your equivalent of white gold is, but I was on the plane today telling me about truffles today. Maybe you've got to give a kg of truffles, and that's going to cost you a bit more than the white bait, apparently. But, you know, you've actually got to, I'm sure Chris will do this more than me, but you've actually got to manipulate the media and use them. In the rugby sense, we've always got an article on the back page. In us sensible people always read the paper on the back to front, we know that. But the floaters, those that may or may not go to the stadium, they start from the front of the page. Yet the only things we get in the front are usually shit about sleeping pills and energy drinks and all that stuff carry on. We've got to try and get some positives on the front page. I've got a mate, Jerry Morris, sorry, I won't mention his name of course, but his name's Jerry Morris just for convenience. He liked to help out with the Wild Food Festival down there, which was fantastic. Open ticket count of 5,000, less than 5,000, 19,000 there for the day. All that come across from Christchurch, had a great time, spend money, fantastic. Never won a tourism award. Probably because people of Rotorua are cleaning up all the time. Anyhow, he said, well, to win an award, he said, you've got to do things beforehand, during and after. So he made sure he had an article about the Wild Food Festival in the Corrie magazine for everyone to read on the plane in the month before the festival. At the festival, he got Polynese and turn up, eating hoo-hoo grubs. Probably with Rick Taylor, who was here tonight. Sorry, today, it's just so dark in here. Dick Taylor, I didn't know he was going to be here, so this is ad living. I can see it in my pants, but he's recently got a gong, so what a bit of round of applause. I texted him and said, congratulations to the second best MC in New Zealand. Not bad for a boy that can run a bit. And he replied back, he said, I don't know what I got for, maybe services to Heineken. Anyhow, true story. Anyhow, back to the Wild Food Festivals, they had Copelands, Dick Taylor, eating hoo-hoo rubs, front page of Sunday Time, and then Jerry showed me, before the event, a press release put out that they'd run out of toilet paper on the West Coast after the Wild Food Festival. There's so many people there and eating so many wild foods. And the garage owner at Kamara Junction explained, don't these people from Christchurch use both sides? Now I decided to go through with Jerry a few of the minor details, like they had me in the garage at Kamara Junction for about 10 years. And how could you work all this out beforehand? He said, because they wanted a tourism award, and sure enough they got a tourism award that year. And those articles quoting that word for word in the Herald and the Dominion Post. Now, maybe just a wee bit dishonest, tongue-in-cheek, whatever, but I'm just using it to illustrate that you, in my opinion, you have to front foot things, get in, start, you have a good program. As one of my mates says, there's no use winging a view on the dark. If you've got some good points, you've got to put them out there. Now, the next point in terms of relevance of what I was saying about the 700 million is surely the strength in numbers. And clubs in New Zealand, you've got scale and you've got scope. There's over 300 of you, you've got 500 staff, I'm told, 22,000 volunteer committee members, over 300,000 paid up members, and therefore it seems to me you should be putting a rocket under Larry, Gus and all these other guys, because clubs in New Zealand, should be running at the front some of your battles, rather than a whole lot of you spending the same amount of money, or at least smaller amounts of money which add up to much more, trying to fight these battles on other clubs' behalf. You must have common issues so many times, seems to me. Lastly, in that area, it is election year, and it provides an opportunity to leverage some progress in countering bureaucracy, I think, because you'll find politicians are just that much wee bit more attentive in that year, and I'm sure Anthony Ball told you about that earlier. Anthony from Australia is a very clever man. I understand it was Australia's new Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, who said he was the suppository of all information. And I think that probably proves that most politicians do talk out their ass. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, during the time on your subcommittees, and a lot of, I think, as I understand it, most of you here are volunteers and you need a great big thanks, but no one's going to thank you, that's the way of the world. Bear in mind the words I was told when I took over being chairman of the Old Bush University Rugby Club. We had a few financial challenges, so we took this rather unorthodox approach to financial management. We stopped spending what we didn't have, and for an amateur sports club at the time that was quite novel. So as a consequence, we lost a few players who, don't quote me on this, may or may not have been having money put in their boots. And then we proceeded to lose just at every game that season in my first year as the chairman. And in the words of the late and great Jock Hobbs, he said to me, Copeland, you're what you leave behind, not what you inherit. The year after I left being the chairman, they got to the final, so I think he must have been right. Ladies and gentlemen, let me finish now by saying good luck, goodbye, which is another quote, this time from the song Bobby Jean by Bruce Springsteen, or The Boss. Born in the USA album, or in fact at Mount Smart Stadium about 3 weeks ago. And since I was frightened that I might not be able to go the distance, I'm not sure if I'm close to it. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy The Boss.